Hello, my name is Austin Habish, the founder of Think Catholic, and you're listening to the Summa podcast, where we study St. Thomas Aquinas' Summa Theologiae in a way simple and insightful for anyone to understand. The Summa podcast is brought to you by Think Catholic. Taking 2 questions of the Summa a day, we'll seek to summarize St. Thomas's responses, discovering the brilliance of Aquinas in his Catholic faith. This is day 84. So let's get started. We're covering today questions 46, 47 of the Prima Secundae, that is, of anger in itself and of the cause that provokes anger and of the remedies of anger. The translation that I always use in these podcasts is the one generously provided to me by Ave Maria Press, the 5-volume set translated by the Fathers of the English Dominican Province, which you can now get at a discounted price from Ave Maria Press's site by typing in the code SUMMA10. And so here we go. Article 1, whether anger is a special passion. Is anger its own unique passion? St. Thomas writes, anger is not a general passion, which would lead one then to ask, what specifically is anger? To which Aquinas continues, the movement of anger does not arise save on account of some pain inflicted, and unless there be desire and hope of revenge. And we will have much more to say about anger in the following articles, but the goal of this present article is simply to show that anger is its own passion, which we likely already know just from experience, as well as that it is distinct from sorrow precisely because of the presence of desire or hope of vengeance. That is the difference between anger and just mere sorrow. Article 2, whether the object of anger is good or evil. Anger's object is kind of a mix of both of those, just in different aspects. Anger's object is the good of justice or revenge. As St. Thomas says, a desire for revenge is a desire for something good, since revenge belongs to justice. Yet at the same time, since vengeance is directed towards this perceived evil, as well as this vengeance would be a punishment to that apprehended evil thing, Aquinas continues, anger regards one object under the aspect of evil, the noxious person on whom it seeks to be avenged. Consequently, it is a passion somewhat made up of contrary passions. So anger as a kind of mixed object. On the one hand, its object is the good of justice, but then on the other hand, it is directed towards the perceived evil and to give the punishment, which is going to be received as an evil to that thing. So it's kind of a mix of sorrow and hope. Sorrow at the evil received and hope of being avenged. Article 3, whether anger is in the concupiscible faculty. It cannot be, because the concupiscible passions have as their objects perceived goods or evils considered simply, not under the aspect of arduousness or difficulty to attain or escape. And it is that added consideration which sets the irascible passions apart from the concupiscible ones. For we do not struggle against the donut, we just desire and enjoy it. Those would be passions within the concupiscible part of the soul. However, we might struggle to get a promotion and so feel hope and courage or fear. Those are irascible passions. And because anger is a passion stemming from an arduous, contrary object, it must be placed within the irascible faculties of the soul. In St. Thomas's words, anger regards 2 objects, the vengeance that it seeks and the person on whom it seeks vengeance. And in respect of both, anger requires a certain arduousness. Therefore, it is evident that anger is not in the concupiscible but in the irascible faculty. Article 4, whether anger requires an act of reason. This is a great question, and one that I believe requires additional treatment from Thomistic scholars in general. On the one hand, because the passions are part of our sensitive appetite, an appetite found in irrational animals as well, one would think that anger does not require an act of reason, because animals obviously do not have the faculty of reason. But then again, anger requires not only the apprehension of a received evil, but also the comparison of that evil with a proportionate punishment to now be rendered out, which is not strictly speaking something seen with the eyes. It's something that goes beyond the external senses. In St. Thomas's words, vengeance implies a comparison between the punishment to be inflicted and the hurt done. Now, to compare and to draw an inference is an act of reason. Therefore, anger, in a fashion, requires an act of reason. So consider the dog growling at a threat, which by natural instinct, it perceives not only that threat, but the vengeance to be afflicted upon that threat if it continues to approach. Now, for human beings, reason can inform our internal apprehension of things, what we call the cogitative sense or particular reason. So here in anger, we see a distinction between the dog's instinct, what we call the estimative sense, and our internal sense, which is informed by reason, what we call the cogitative sense. And for more on those internal senses, I'd see episodes 39 through 41 of this podcast. Article 5, whether anger is more natural than desire. St. Thomas begins this article by telling us what we mean by calling things natural. They are that which results from our nature. And as human beings, we have not only our nature as human, the rational animal, but we also have our individual habits, our virtues and vices, our individual temperament, which can constitute something like a second nature for us. Now, according to our nature as a rational animal, anger is more of a rational leaning thing than desire is, and for the reasons we mentioned in our previous article. Also, as St. Thomas says in this article, reason itself belongs to the nature of man. Wherefore, from the very fact that anger requires an act of reason, it follows that it is, in a manner, natural to man. So in this way, anger is natural to man. Also, when we consider our second nature or unique temperament, our virtues, our vices, anger can also be more natural to a certain man than desire. First of all, because it is natural to resist obstacles opposed to a thing, and if it be the case with this particular man that he have a short fuse or be especially given to anger, then it will spring forth more naturally than desire. Article 6, whether anger is more grievous than hatred. Hatred is more grievous because it wishes evil to this perceived evil thing simply. A man who hates his brother not only sees him as evil, but because of seeing him that way, wishes evil to him. However, a man who is just angry with his brother may only want justice to be done to him for some specific wrong he committed, and justice is a good thing, and it does not entail that he actually hate his brother. Aquinas' response to this article is in the following words: "For the one who hates wishes evil to his enemy as evil, whereas the angry man wishes evil to him whom he is angry, not as evil, but insofar as it has an aspect of good, that is, insofar as he reckons it as just, since it is a means of vengeance. Hatred implies application of evil to evil, whereas anger denotes application of good to evil. Now it is evident that to seek evil under the aspect of justice is a lesser evil than simply to seek evil to someone." Article 7, whether anger is only towards those to whom one has an obligation of justice. Anger, again, is the passion elicited in us by some object that has acted unjustly towards us and is now the cause of our vengeance. Therefore, in response to our article, anger does regard those to whom there is an obligation of justice. Think of how quickly parents become incensed at their children. And precisely because children owe their parents justly obedience, gratitude, and respect, we even get angry at irrational animals because they too, in a sense, ought to be subordinate to us, the rational animal, especially if this animal be one of our pets. We can even get angry with ourselves when we commit an injustice to ourselves by sinning, and so realize that we ourselves are worthy of punishment or receiving vengeance. In St. Thomas's words, anger desires evil as being a means of just vengeance. Consequently, anger is towards those to whom we are just or unjust, since vengeance is an act of justice, and wrongdoing is an act of injustice. Therefore, both on the part of the cause, the harm done by another, and on the part of the vengeance sought by the angry man, it is evident that anger concerns those to whom one is just or unjust. Article 8, whether the species of anger are suitably assigned. Citing St. John Damascene, Aquinas gives us 3 specific kinds of anger within the broader category of anger. And these specific differences are based on how they uniquely increase the passion of anger. The first is called wrath, which is an increased anger based on the facility or ease of the passion elicited in us. The second is an increased anger based on the endurance of grief, of the sorrow received and then sought to be repaid. This kind of anger is called ill will. The third is an increased anger based on the goal of the angry man, the fulfillment of vengeance, which as not resting until it is satisfied is called rancor. And so we move on to question 47, of the cause that provokes anger and of the remedies of anger. Article 1, whether the motive of anger is always something done against the one who is angry. Because anger is, according to St. Thomas, the desire to hurt another for the purpose of just vengeance, then it must be caused by an offense to the person who is now angered. However, we have to remember, as we've said about friendship already in previous episodes, we also take our friends to be included in us. They are an alter sui, another self. And so we take the things that happen to them to have happened to us, and therefore our friend's sorrow can be a cause of our anger. We're even able to be angry with people who despise not just people, but things that we love. Because again, love is a kind of union which unites us in some way with those things. To this point, St. Thomas writes, when we take a very great interest in a thing, we look upon it as our own good, so that if anyone despise it, it seems as though we ourselves were despised and injured. Article 2, whether the sole motive of anger is slight or contempt. This is a good article to take to prayerful reflection. Beginning with Aquinas, he writes, all the causes of anger are reduced to slight. And what is slight? He continues, whatever injury is afflicted on us, insofar as it is derogatory to our excellence, seems to savor of a slight. Since nothing elicits anger in us save that which is seen as an injustice to us, as not giving us what is our due, a slight against us, then it is clear that all anger is the result of being slighted. The practical takeaway from this is that the greater one is in their own eyes, the more likely they are going to perceive the treatment from others as derogatory or under their excellence, and therefore get angry. It is also why the burden of our Lord is easy and light, as he said, because it is the burden of the humble. For of truth, all of us born of Adam are sinners and therefore deserving of hell. We should never feel too great in our own eyes or too slighted by the evils we receive at others' hands, because to be honest, anything short of hell should be seen as a lesser evil than we deserve. Lastly, and within this article, how does slight apply to irrational animals? St. Thomas says, although a dumb animal does not seek honor as such, yet it naturally seeks a certain superiority and is angry with anything derogatory thereto. Article 3, whether a man's excellence is the cause of his being angry. And I appreciate that Aquinas lines out this part of what was already contained in the previous article to consider it separately. It is almost as if to say that we should reflect on our own degree of humility and to seek to become less, that Christ may become more. As St. John the Baptist said, Aquinas says, it is evident that the more excellent a man is, the more unjust is a slight offered to him in the matter in which he excels. Consequently, those who excel in any matter are most of all angry if they be slighted in that matter. For instance, a wealthy man in his riches, or an orator in his eloquence, and so forth. So the nuance in this article is that not only will a man be more susceptible to anger the greater he is in his own eyes, but he will also be angrier in those particular matters or areas in which he especially finds himself to be excellent in. Article 4, whether a person's defect is a reason for being more easily angry with him. The perceived defect in the one slighting an angry person is certainly a reason to be more easily angered. And this because, again, the more excellent a person takes him or herself to be relative to the person who has slighted them, the greater that slight is going to be viewed as an injustice. Imagine the king being berated by the peasant. It is more likely to anger him than if his mother happened to be yelling at him. And a word from St. Thomas, unmerited contempt, more than anything else, is provocative of anger. Consequently, deficiency or littleness in the person with whom we are angry tends to increase our anger insofar as it adds to the unmeritedness of being despised. And with that, we come to a close of another episode. We have just finished covering questions 46 and 47 of the Prima Secundae, that is, of anger in itself, and of the cause that provokes anger, and of the remedies of anger. My name is Austin Habish with Think Catholic, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow.